This is Mike Sylvia with New Bedford Guide. I am here with Reverend David Lima. He is the chair of the Greater New Bedford Suicide Prevention Coalition. Last week we had a suicide at Buttonwood Park. A man hanged himself from a tree, and I thought it was a good time. I knew right away to contact David, and he would know what to talk about as the expert in this area. So the stats are pretty shocking. It's the 10th leading cause of death in America is suicides. Every 12 minutes in America, 42,000 Americans annually. Shocking numbers. So you talked about stats earlier with me.
Yeah, and statistics, I hate statistics, I hate data, but that's what helps to inform us. It is the 10th leading cause of death in America right now, and that is shocking in and of itself. Another thing to understand is it's the second leading cause of death for youth up to the age of 24. Let's face it, young people aren't supposed to die. Usually it's accidents that would kill someone younger. Suicide statistics are difficult for a lot of people to understand because it's not something that's on everybody's radar. It doesn't make the front page. People aren't necessarily aware of what's happening around them. Last year, we had close to 600 suicides in the state. The Bristol County had somewhere around 66 suicides, but you don't usually hear about them unless they're very public, like what happened last week, or it is a youth suicide because it demands a public response. The schools are going to have counselors in. Parents need to know what's happening for their youth, and so those kind of things have to take place. But just to give you an idea, here in the state of Massachusetts, the last official statistics we have, which usually lag at least a couple of years because they got to go through the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, suicides was 585 in the state. Homicides were a little over 100. Motor vehicle deaths were just around 380. That means if you add homicides, murders, and motor vehicle deaths together, they don't add up to the amount of suicides. And it's been that way for quite a few years. There's a lot of difficulty going on out there, and probably the demographic of the highest at risk are middle-aged white men. Because, and especially after the recent recession, you had loss of jobs, loss of homes, loss of family, marriages, divorces took place. And so it was middle-aged white men that gained the highest demographic. It's not youth, but again, that's what people hear about the most, so that's what they think, is that the youth are the most at risk. But they're actually one of the lower demographics. But yes, there's a lot of difficulties that are out there, and a lot of people that if they don't get the help they need can see this as a solution.
So we're going to talk about statistics, then we're going to talk about some of the signs of suicide, and then we're going to talk about resources. In the text below the video, there are resources. If anyone out there is depressed, or they know someone that is, or potentially might commit suicide, don't delay, right? Because you don't know what could happen.
No, not at all. You don't want anybody to delay. And if there's anything that I want to offer in this message today is hope. What may seem unsolvable today, which may seem overwhelming today, tomorrow, if we get past today, we look back at it and say it was a learning moment. Let's face it, there's a lot of difficulties that we go through in life these days, and probably more so. And then when you watch the news and you see everything else, it can get real depressing out there. And that's if you don't have issues in your own life that might be, you might have depression, or you might have some other issues, either behavioral health or addictions or something else. But usually what happens with suicide is people don't see a way out. And I describe it, and the people that I work with, as a perfect storm moment. Access to a capability of doing it, darkness and not being able to see their way out, and just no one there at the moment to be able to just offer hope. And I'm not talking about doctors and psychologists and everything else. I'm just talking about a caring voice that says, hey, I'm here, what can we do?
And there's phone numbers, there's the Samaritans, there's the national hotline, there's a local coalition, the website is linked in there. So what is kind of shocking for some is males are 4 times more likely to commit suicide successfully, but females commit suicide 3 times more often than men, but they just don't do it successfully. Why do you think that is?
Men usually use more lethal means, and it's hard to recover from an attempt when you're using more lethal means. Again, I don't want to get into all the whole nastiness of how some of these things occur, but they may use weapons, they may use other more forceful things, whereas the ladies, the females, are usually more of taking something, ingesting something, which if somebody finds them in time, they can recover from.
So 50% of all suicides, a gun is used.
That is true, especially for the country. Here in this state, it is not. There are other means that are more prevalent, and again, because of the strict gun laws here in the state. And the other thing that this state does that it does not happen across the country is, and as bad as we think these numbers are for us, our state ranks 48th in the amount of suicides per capita, percentage-wise. This state is one of the few states in the country that actually puts money into suicide prevention. There is the Mass Coalition for Suicide Prevention. There is, it is under the Mass Department of Public Health. There are people that actually work on this, bringing in best practices and trainings. So there is a lot of things that we can do. And we received a small grant to be able to do trainings, and we have actually trained over 1,000 people in QPR here in the Greater New Bedford area, including some of the schools and social services and other groups, and we're willing to do that for free, and get people information on even more in-depth training. But there's a training called Question, Persuade, Refer that can be done in an hour and can give people a lot of tools in exactly what to do.
So that's it. I did look up the numbers, success. So across the country, it's 13 per 100,000 suicides. In Massachusetts, it's 8. So that's a 50% decrease. So obviously money, resources is working. You guys won an award last year or recently?
The city, our Greater New Bedford Suicide Prevention Coalition, and we were able to receive a leadership in suicide prevention. We came together 4 years ago when the 5th youth suicide took place in a 22-month period, and that's usually referred to as a cluster. And we decided something needed to be done. We called people together, and we had churches, we had schools. We had everybody from the mayor's office right through to the DA's office, the sheriff's department. You had people come together. We've got over 30 organizations that in one way or another ends up giving us assistance and people getting trained. And so we really made it a concerted effort, and we are always trying to raise awareness. We have our annual suicide prevention walk, which we do as awareness, not as a fundraiser. We're on a shoestring. We get no funding other than what we did for this training. We do everything with volunteers. The walk is the last Saturday of the month, and that'll be taking place this year. I believe it's on the 26th. We're still finalizing the details. But again, it's all to raise awareness so that people can learn what some of the suicide signs are, to put it on people's radar, and again, just to teach people that if we care enough about each other and if we pay attention to each other, we might be able to head off something that can be really devastating.
So we have some comments. Sean Nathan, my little brother, 19, killed himself just over losing a co-op job. Think before you do it and call someone. Derek Rocha seems to be a younger person. He says, are there any Big Brother or Big Sister programs? If so, can we possibly try to start one? Yeah, there is one in New Bedford. And I've worked with them before. There's a long waiting list of boys, some girls, and Big Brother, Big Sister is absolutely great, because sometimes some of these young teens and young kids need a role model to help them.
And it's not just a role model, it's somebody that will care about them. That's, look, half of society is somebody needing to know that somebody cares. And Child and Family does run the local Boys and Big Brothers, Big Sisters. I would suggest a phone call, but I would also suggest that anybody that's out there that has any kind of time, Big Brothers, Big Sisters is an excellent program. You donate an hour of your time once a week, and it makes a difference in somebody's life.
Last time I talked to them, there was 60 boys on a waiting list.
Which
like
means we just need that many more people to step up.
We need twice that, because, you know.
That's right.
You know, let's have a waiting list of the older adults helping out these young kids.
But that's what it takes. It takes a city to come together. It takes a community to just give that much time. It doesn't take a lot. A lot of people think, what kind of difference can I make? Just caring about people makes a difference.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the signs. So as a military guy, I've gotten a lot of training of how to detect it. They're not always obvious. So obviously someone giving away all their possessions, saying goodbye is the obvious stuff.
It can be very subtle. There are direct verbal clues that we hear, people that say things. And sometimes though, when we hear the direct stuff, you know, I'm going to kill myself or something, some of us don't even pay attention. You know, people say things all the time. And sometimes people think that it's attention seeking or something to that effect. But if we see enough clues, and some of it is the verbal stuff, that innocuous, nobody's gonna have to worry about me again, or you know, I'm not gonna be around much any longer soon. There's some of those verbal signs. There are some of the signs that occur, like you had mentioned that somebody had sent in about their brother had lost a co-op job, an opportunity. Some things, it's what happens to us, losing a job, being expelled or suspended from school or something else. We have life things that happen that can affect how we're feeling. And again, if we don't feel that there's something going on that we can move forward, that can be devastating. Giving away possessions, it's usually subtle. It's not like all to one person, but it might be something that really means something to somebody, and they're giving it to a best friend. I actually had to respond to someone who had suicided in Middleborough, and in an elderly housing complex. And come to find out afterwards, when people were talking, they realized he gave his cat to one person, he gave his war medals to somebody else, and so that can be. People do that all the time, but at the same time, when they're doing it out of course, it's just not normal. You just want to pay attention, you know, and ask questions. How you doing? What's going on?
Because suicide is the most preventable cause of death.
It is easily the most preventable cause of death. When we train people, we talk about, you know, extreme anger and everything else. And the example that I try to use with people is, have we ever done something stupid? And of course, 90% of the people raise their hands when we're doing this question. And then I tell the other 10% that I don't do confession, but I'll listen to them afterwards, because most of us are just kidding ourselves if we think we've never done anything stupid. And what I mean by that is getting angry, getting upset, and like, you know, going after the boss, or going after our spouse or significant other, and getting angry and just blowing up. And I said, have you ever had somebody that saw you that way before you did something foolish and just asked you that question? Hey, what's going on? You look pretty angry. And then all of a sudden, because somebody asked, you were able to discuss it, and it diffused the thing in you. And then all of a sudden, you didn't make that move and got angry and went and told somebody off. Well, it's the same thing. When somebody is building up to that place where they think that their solution is death, it's a pressure building thing. And the one thing that a lot of people don't understand is, if you ask somebody, are you planning to hurt yourself? They'll always tell you no, because they're not looking at hurting themselves. They're looking at ending the hurt. They're going through enough pain, mentally, physically, spiritually, that their only solution that they can see is death, is suicide. That is preventable just by somebody offering any kind of hope, just caring, you know. And so a simple thing like, look, I care about you, I want you to live, you know, I want to help you get the help you need, you know, being able to stay with someone. But if somebody is really in a place that you're concerned about, then you do need to reach out. And like when we're dealing with someone who has an addiction, you can't just give them the resources and expect them to walk away and utilize them. We need to help stay along with someone until we know they get connected. So the one thing around here, you know, we have the Crisis Center on North Street through Child and Family. We have different social workers and psychologists and stuff that will work with people. But if you're really worried about someone, you need to get them down to the hospital, the emergency department. If you think it's something imminent that you're really concerned about, you need to call 911. I would tell anybody that. You call 911, because then once somebody comes in, and of course you want to do this if you're really concerned, but they are obligated to bring someone in and have them evaluated. And, you know, everything is not perfect. We've had some incidences in recent time where somebody goes in, gets evaluated, comes out and does something. But for the most part, it does work, and they do get help. And that's the biggest thing, is getting people help when they need it.
So let's talk some more signs that are not obvious all the time, but, you know, talking about it obviously, but talking about being a burden to others, increased use of alcohol and drugs. Someone mentioned that. So they're drinking way more than they ever have done. They start using some drugs. They're sleeping in way too much, or sometimes way too little. They're not getting any sleep at all. Isolation. You never see a friend anymore. He's always at home and he refuses to go out. And mood swings and rage. You know, someone who you just make a joke and they like yell at you and maybe you want to take a swing at you. They're angry all the time.
Right. Different things like getting closer to the church, to a faith belief, or withdrawing from it can also be the case. And going back a little bit to drinking and/or drugs, there is, and I think we all know this, especially with the scourge of addiction that we've got going on right now, the heroin opiate overdose dilemma that we have. A lot of people are self-medicating. They're resorting to drinking and/or drugs because it helps them at least moderate their depression and everything else. The truth is, it doesn't moderate anything. It dulls the senses, and then a lot of times when we come out of it, we end up with a bigger problem that gets added to it. Probably at least a quarter to a third of suicides has had some type of addiction abuse involved with it. And one of the reasons why the CDC gets involved is they review every case, even ones that may be suicide, and some of the ones that are not determined yet is the ones that don't have an obvious but could have been a suicide, and some of that will be overdoses.
So let's talk resources now. So the phone number is there. There's a national suicide prevention hotline. You can call, get information. You can just talk to those folks. The Greater New Bedford Suicide Prevention Coalition is a website. It's in the link there. I provide some resources. Other places, you could go to your local church, you can go to your local whatever religion you are, talk to the leadership there, seek medical profession. A lot of times people are scared to go to the doctors. They feel they're going to get, sectioned or something like that. Right. But there are, like, if I was deciding I was suicidal or depression, I can go to a church, and are churches legally mindful? If someone says they're thinking about hurting themselves, are they legally have to say something? Or
there's a whole question about legalities of, is this the confession? Well, if somebody's confessing that they're about to die, I'm breaking any kind of thing. See, this is where it becomes a real dilemma, and whether you call it moral or anything else. If I'm so concerned about someone in seeing where they are and what's going on, am I worried about them losing their job? Well, if they die, then the job's lost anyway. The income's lost. If they need assistance, then that's something else. If they're in such a depressive state, then that's something else. But even when we do our trainings, I tell people that I would rather lose a friend
And lose a friend.
Than lose a friend for good. I lose them or have them angry with me is a whole lot better than taking them to the cemetery.
They'll thank you a year later, though.
And you know, you say that, invariably that is the case. I work with a lot of social workers. I work with a lot of people that do crisis. I myself, earlier this year, had someone who we were able to secure the guns. We were able to get them the assistance, but I made it clear. You're either coming with me to the emergency department or I'm calling 911. Upset as anything when he ended up being there for a few days, but afterwards acknowledged that it was the best thing for him. And that's usually the case.
So let's cut to the point. Someone's thinking about hurting themselves or killing themselves, or someone knows someone who is. What's your suggestion?
My suggestion is to offer hope. Offer them your personal, I don't want to see you die. I want you to live. Offer that, how much you care about them, and then offer to help them get the help they need. Take them wherever they need to go. Make the calls with them. Don't just say, here's the number for Samaritan. Dial the number for Samaritan. Samaritan's a great organization, and they're able to talk people through a lot of things. But then keep in touch with them. Don't just forget people once they've come through a scene, because the perfect storm moments may come back again. You know, life's a journey, and we have to remember that. And we have to continue to work with people and but the one statistic that does exist is that most people who are helped before suicide will never be suicidal again. Most. In fact, it's believed that 95% of everyone who has considered and or attempted and survived will never do so again.
They get resources for future thoughts.
That's the whole thing. And again, most of everything the biggest thing, whether it's counseling and everything else, the biggest thing even that anybody can give is that offer of hope and care. When we tell people that we care, it goes a long way. It would solve a lot of problems in this society.
So we covered a lot of good stuff. Resources are there. People can go to the websites and find it. So let's end it with something that's something dear to everyone in the community right now, which is the murder of Sabrina Da Silva. So there is a community vigil tomorrow from 6 to 8 at 9 Bedford Street, which it's actually where the shooting actually placed at the rear parking lot. So you're kind of involved in that right now.
I'm helping with it. There's a lot of community groups and leaders that are going to be a part of it. Sad to say that there's been too many of these in our community over the years. And myself, the Interchurch Council, as well as many others, have always taken part to offer, again, that place of hope, to just say, look, we're here. This didn't happen to us, but it happened to us. The thing is this is our community. And we need to be able to go down there jointly to share in the grief, to share in the support of this neighborhood. We can't just let it hang there by itself. And if we care about anybody, then we need to be able to offer that care and show that support. So there will be the vigil. It will be starting at 6 o'clock, 6 to roughly 8 o'clock. There will be mostly just some people will talk. Some people will share, their stories of her and their memories. It's kind of a bit like a memorial type thing. There'll be some candles. There'll be some prayers. There'll be some things that people need to be able to hear just for their own security's sake. How do we go about things? Again, we have. It's not just the direct family, though they are the ones that have the most incredible need right now. A grandmother enjoys being a grandmother. We're grandparents. I can't even imagine my grandchildren losing their parents and all of a sudden being alone in the world and I'm having to raise my grandchild as my child. We do need to come together as a community.
Yeah, so it was pretty brutal, and everyone copes differently with a loss. Some people are very upset, they don't know who she was, but it upsets them to see this. So you can come out there, there'll be some people out there that you can at least talk to, get some resources potentially, and let the community kind of, send a message to this person who supposedly shot her 9 times with a mask while she was unloading groceries, based on her GoFundMe account. So tomorrow, I'll re-summarize. Tomorrow, Community Vigil, 9 Bedford, 6 to 8 o'clock. Come out there. Reverend Lima will be there if you want to talk to him. He'll obviously be pretty busy, so if you see him talking to people, wait your turn. Okay, so thanks a lot, Reverend Lima. We appreciate you talking about suicide prevention today.
Thank you, Michael.